Paul Feig is also choosing to ignore the fact that this is not the first time Blake has lied and falsely accused a man of harassment. It has happened twice before that we know of, meaning 3 times in total, with Justin Baldoni being the latest. These prior incidents include a makeup artist that she had fired on a previous film set, which she admitted to in 2017 during the Me Too movement. Paul Feig thinks that the outrage against Blake Lively is boring, and that there are misconceptions about her, and that we all don't know what we're talking about. That certainly begs the question, is he just a spineless, illiterate coward who didn't actually take the time to look into the mountain of irrefutable evidence that has been presented against Blake Lively and her narrative, which completely throttles every single last one of her allegations? Or is he just biased? An intellectually dishonest rat like Ari Emanuel of WME, who is allowing the profit that Blake has garnered him to cloud his better judgment and, all basic human decency? I personally think it's the latter, and that Paul Feig is being willfully obtuse because it benefits him to do so, to pretend to be ignorant of the truth of the matter. At the very least, Paul Feig is ignoring the highly unethical way Blake Lively and her team stole Justin and his PR team's text messages to snoop through them and then expose them to the media. These were private text messages sent in confidence by Justin and his team during a PR crisis that hinged on extortion and false allegations of sexual harassment that Blake and her lawyers obtained in an unlawful manner, then cherry-picked and painted in a false light, and then exposed them to the media to serve a fraudulent purpose. Why on earth would you want anything to do with a person who would direct her team to do something like this, let alone be lionized her to the public as though she's a good, well-meaning person, just so your shitty, straight-to-streaming, critically panned film wouldn't be overshadowed by her legal drama? Also, why wouldn't these sorts of unethical tactics used by Blake's team raise eyebrows on Paul Feig's end? Why wouldn't he ask himself, if Blake is innocent, why is her team fighting so underhandedly? If the truth is on her side and the public is wrong about her, and she's such a good person, as he continuously claims, why would she need to resort to proven lies and extortion and threats and unlawful subpoenas to bring her so-called harasser to justice, when so many legal, easily accessible avenues exist for her to hold the man who supposedly harmed her accountable? Those legal avenues to seek remedy for sexual harassment would start with, at the very least, actually filing HR complaints on set to have the claims investigated, instead of instructing her crooked lawyers to draft an extortionary document to entrap Justin into signing it at the risk of destroying his entire film enterprise if he did not. That is what factually happened, and it was wrong regardless of what Justin did or didn't do on set. Blake handled it very wrong. That cannot be denied. Blake taking those legal avenues also would have included simply suing Justin and properly subpoenaing him for his text messages with judicial oversight, which would have tailored them and made sure they were relevant to the case at hand, instead of her unlawfully stealing his private information and gaining access to his PR agent's personal iCloud account, which contained far more than text messages pertaining to her work. And because they knew it was wrong, Blake and her team did all of this through a fraudulent Doe lawsuit, and then later withdrew that lawsuit only to give all that stolen information obtained over to the New York Times instead of, the courts. In order to prove the smear campaign or retaliation against her, she went straight to the media, not the courts. That should raise eyebrows with anyone pretending she's a good person. And she went to the media, very obviously, to avoid due process, giving Justin a fighting chance. And she also went to the media to avoid drawing the scrutiny of the courts onto her claims of sexual harassment, just like she circumvented an investigation into those claims on set because she did not file formal HR complaints, because she knows her allegations are provable lies. which were trumped up over time. They changed and evolved over time, mostly after filming ended. And this is also why she did not actually file a lawsuit against Justin in federal court until Justin forced her hand by announcing that he would be suing her first. So she sued him to beat him to the punch and save face. And what's crazy is that her team actually had access to the stolen information from Justin and his PR team's phones before the sham Doe lawsuit and subpoena was even filed. And they only filed the fake fraudulent lawsuit under Blake and Ryan's shell company, Van Zandt Inc., to avoid the public's detection, but also to cover their asses because they had already illegally obtained and viewed that private information. All of that is factual and proves, at the very least, Blake Lively is an evil, calculating, manipulative individual, aside from her false allegations of sexual harassment. She is not the victim she has been trying to paint herself out to be, and she is not, by any means, the wonderful, harmless angel Paul Feig has painted her out to be, in spite of the plethora of evidence that illustrates she is quite the contrary. Paul Feig is also choosing to ignore the fact that Blake Lively, who was best friends with Taylor Swift and named her godmother to all her children, used Taylor Swift, with text message proof, as a threat to hijack control of the movie It Ends With Us, and she did this on multiple occasions. But the most infamous instance was when Justin refused to allow Blake to rewrite the most pivotal scene of the film, so she manipulatively timed a meeting with Justin and her husband and a run-in with Taylor Swift to intimidate Justin into letting her get what she wanted. Reliable sources for Taylor Swift even confirmed this to TMZ. She then later texted Justin, referring to Ryan and Taylor as her dragons, who would ensure she got what she wanted in the end, and that it was essentially best for those who didn't want to be harmed by her dragons to play along, so they could all benefit from the weight of these dragons' influence, and not the alternative, meaning suffer under the weight of these dragons' influence. That was an outright threat to Justin to play along. And the issue with her using and name-dropping Taylor Swift became so bad in the end that Taylor Swift will now be deposed and subpoenaed. So Taylor Swift has publicly distanced herself from Blake during this legal battle. Additionally, Taylor Swift has not spoken out once in support of Blake as the victim, even though she stepped out in support of Kesha during her sexual harassment case. And Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, also recently unfollowed Ryan and Blake on social media, likely due to them getting Taylor and himself wrapped up in this legal drama. So it is factual that Blake Lively exploited her best friend so ruthlessly and referred to her in such a dehumanizing manner as her dragon, like her pet pit bull, that she publicly lost that friend. And since that particular threat about the dragons, we now understand that Ryan and Taylor Swift were not Blake's only dragons. That list would also include the New York Times, who they used in a later threat to Justin, trying to get him to release a self-incriminating statement to take the fall for Blake's self-inflicted downfall. And that list of dragons would also include Ari Emanuel of WME, who Ryan enlisted to publicly fire Justin in support of Blake. And Ari Emanuel, the imbecile that he is, did so and then publicly bragged about it in a podcast, saying despite him not knowing whether the allegations were true or not, he fired Justin to appease Blake because she felt she wasn't being protected. And that list of dragons also clearly includes Paul Feig, who has been relentlessly and sacrificially licking Blake's dirty asshole since this whole drama popped off, and conveniently hired for his next film two of Blake's other most vocal supporters in her lies against Justin Baldoni, and that would be Brandon Sklenar and Michele Morrone, who actually made a video supporting Blake's lies and lying about the situation himself, which I'll show later in this video. Her earliest dragon threats before the real damage was inflicted with the help of WME and the New York Times was psychotic, but it was also a prelude to the lengths Blake would go to in order to harm someone on her shit list for whatever reason they landed there. And what's critical about the dragon threat is that, coupled with her multiple instances of proven extortion, such as the 17 provisions document that granted her total creative control on set, and the extortionary threat that granted her a PGA producer credit, those threats and those instances of extortion taken in consideration with Ryan applying pressure to people like Ari Emanuel to dump Justin as a client, as well as getting a massive publication like the New York Times to falsely smear Justin with stolen text messages, amounts to racketeering. That is illegal. It is a felony. Why don't people get that? I guess because it involves Hollywood, people don't seem to care about the particularly heinous nature of Blake and Ryan's innumerable crimes, and this is not okay. The media is purposefully minimizing or outright ignoring it. Just like Time magazine honoring Blake for a 6-year-old donation to help rehabilitate her image at this critical moment. Just like Seth Meyers granting her a platform to spew more unhinged, self-aggrandizing bullshit lies and then silencing the public just because they dared to call out those lies, and her previous illicit behavior where she falsely accused a man of SH to steal his movie. And Paul Feig has gone on the record 100% supporting and endorsing Blake Lively as a person, and thereby supporting and endorsing her pathological criminal behavior. On that note, Paul Feig not only supports Blake falsely accusing and defaming a man for personal gain, but he reportedly also allowed her to mock that man in his movie, as if her husband viciously mocking and killing Justin in Deadpool and Wolverine wasn't enough, and as if Blake stealing his movie and denigrating and humiliating him and marginalizing him from his own cast during the press tour of his movie weren't enough, they still needed to continue to kick this man while he was already down. So they apparently added a line in what appears to be post-production about Blake suing Anna Kendrick's character into oblivion, which was a quote from Brian Friedman, Justin Baldoni's bulldog attorney, who is determined to see him get justice after being viciously slandered by these two psychopaths. Paul Feig has also chosen to go on the record distorting and trivializing the fact that Blake Lively extorted Justin Baldoni and hijacked his movie, and then later defamed him. And Paul Feig is doing this by pretending it was just about an actress wanting creative input and that this is all normal. It happens all the time, guys, don't you know? Clearly, you don't know Hollywood like he does. He is insulting our intelligence. He's telling us we don't know what we're talking about, yet this absolute fucking moron is reducing this colossal, highly convoluted issue down to Blake being denied creative input. Therefore, what she did on the set of It Ends With Us was justified. He is insisting that it is normal for an actress to extort people out of their intellectual property so long as they're egotistically doing it in pursuit of authorship. He is thereby suggesting that Blake did nothing wrong by removing Justin from his own poster, both as the lead actor and as the director with his A Film By credit, because of course authorship means she needed to be the only one on the poster of the film, and she needed to take credit as basically being the director of this film. That is a perfectly reasonable demand on her end. According to Paul Feig, she also did nothing wrong when she hijacked the edit of the film with literal threats, even threatening her way into getting her edit of the film screened in theaters, because this is what all the best actresses do, don't you know? And also, Blake did nothing wrong by trying to banish a director from his own film premiere, and even threatening not to attend if he was allowed to attend. She did nothing wrong when she demanded a letter of support from Justin's company for an unearned and undeserved PGA producer credit, in which they granted her under duress, noting so in a company-wide email. And according to Paul, all the best actresses do this. Paul Feig is also willfully ignoring the video of Blake from Forbes in 2022, where she discusses deliberately deceiving directors about her true intentions for being a part of their projects, and then seeking to hijack their films once she has already been cast as just an actress, which was exactly what took place on the set of It Ends With Us. Blake also admitted to pretending to be okay with the nude scenes in All I See Is You, with the stated intention of voicing objections to those nude scenes after she was already hired, and they were trapped with her as the lead actress, which she makes a habit of doing, and which thankfully did not work out for her on that particular movie. And this is all done in lieu of her being a decent, honest person and stating her issues with a film or a script up front, or simply stating up front that she would like to be more creatively involved than what an actress credit would otherwise entail. Then allowing all those directors and producers to make an informed decision about whether they want someone like her with her stated intentions to be a part of their project, which they have the right to decide as the ultimate authority and the captains at the helm of their own projects. Something you would think the gutless Paul Feig would be in agreement with as a filmmaker himself, and at the very least, you would expect this feckless old fool to acknowledge that she is using deceit to advance her own agenda on someone else's intellectual property, and that this is wrong because deceit is inherently wrong. My God, these are very elementary concepts of morality here, yet he fails even that test at his big age. This man is a whole 62 years old, and he's unable, or equally as despicable, unwilling to call out flagrant wrongdoing because he is an amoral cretin who likely is guilty of far worse than Blake and his dealings behind the scenes. So I suppose it shouldn't be surprising that he made light of SA in a gross, incestuous scene of Blake's triplet drugging and filling her up in another simple favor. Funny that she tried to call Justin adding romantic scenes to a romantic film gratuitous, but she was perfectly okay performing this psychotic, perverted, inarguably gratuitous scene for this shitty, straight-to-streaming film. Paul Feig's amorality is why I believe he played a bigger hand in her scheme to destroy Justin than we realize. I believe he has been instrumental in rallying support for Blake after the fallout of It Ends With Us, mostly for self-serving reasons because he had a movie coming out starring her, which is why it's no coincidence that he is the new geriatric face for Blake's laughably pathetic fan club following her downfall. He and his equally pathetic, deranged wife have been working overtime to salvage Blake's image, and it's not going so well. No matter what she does, she is still tarnished by the public, including after her exploitative, performative Time 100 speech and after her attending the Seth Meyers show. The massive backlash foiling all of her desperate PR attempts of late is just glorious. They even had to cut the comments off in her Seth Meyers video because she was being dragged so hard, and that is hilarious to me. Paul Feig is also choosing to ignore the fact that this is not the first time Blake has lied and falsely accused a man of harassment. It has happened twice before that we know of, meaning 3 times in total, with Justin Baldoni being the latest. These prior incidents include a makeup artist that she had fired on a previous film set, which she admitted to in 2017 during the Me Too movement. The way we can be assured she was lying and that he was only fired to appease her is because of her track record of other false allegations and the available evidence that proves she was lying in those instances, such as video footage, but also because of her separate track record of admitting to smearing and deceiving her work colleagues, and also because of her other track record of having at least 4 different people fired on the set of It Ends With Us for no other reason than she is a capricious, vindictive idiot. And those firings had nothing to do with the sexual harassment allegations. She was just firing people to satisfy her own whims. But we also can be assured her allegations against this makeup artist were fake because when recounting the story in 2017, she admitted the studio wouldn't do anything about her accusations until she got her lawyer involved, you know, like she did with Justin Baldoni, and which led to that extortionary 17 provisions document. But even after she got her lawyer involved against the makeup artist and had him fired, they still gave that man a letter of recommendation to be hired elsewhere. That illustrates for us that third parties who looked into her allegations at the time found them to be meritless, meaning the makeup artist was only fired to placate her and quiet her outrageous lies, not because he did anything wrong. The fact that they recommended for him to be hired elsewhere demonstrates, like these other two cases, that Blake's accusations were not truthful, but because she entraps these studios in difficult situations with her outrageous egotistical behavior, and they feel they have no choice but to placate her in any way they can while trying to minimize the damage to their own projects and companies. Weaponizing false allegations of sexual misconduct is pure evil, almost as evil as sexual misconduct itself, and women like Blake Lively need to be stopped and held accountable, not celebrated, nor should their delusions of victimhood be affirmed. And the other instance we know of where Blake and her husband falsely accused the man of stalking and harassment was a paparazzi named Richard Fedek. This case completely corroborates the case Justin Baldoni is making against Blake and Ryan, which is one of malicious false accusations which resulted in defamation and substantial monetary damages caused by their crusade to ruin a man's life. The YouTube channel Without a Crystal Ball has a video breaking down the exclusive evidence she was given by the photographer Richard, who was falsely accused of stalking and harassing and even a hit and run by Blake and Ryan, and whose charges were eventually dropped due to video evidence he provided to exonerate himself. This video evidence also proved the malicious lengths Blake and Ryan are willing to resort to when they are lying to destroy someone's life. It is fucking pathological at this point, and Paul Feig is supporting all of it because he wants his movies to do well, so he is trying to butter up and kiss the ass of these massive celebrities. However, the issue with Paul Feig goes beyond even that, and kind of even implicates him in colluding with Blake and Ryan to help destroy Justin Baldoni and bolster Blake's false allegations by buying her support from Brandon Sklenar and Michele Morrone in particular, which I'll explain in a later clip from my older video. But after I read this article where he admitted on a podcast to hiring Brandon Sklenar on Blake's recommendation and not just by coincidence, I no longer had any doubt in my mind that he did so to buy her public support from Brandon, despite the fact that Brandon Sklenar is elsewhere on record saying what a safe and comfortable filming environment It Ends With Us was, and what good guys both Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath were. His tune suddenly changed once he was given a role in Paul Feig's new movie, and that is no coincidence. Due to this possible collusion and Paul Feig publicly supporting Blake's extortion and lies and going out of his way to be nasty and spiteful to fans online who speak up about the truth and speak out about Blake's well-documented atrocious behavior, I feel Paul Feig and the cast of Another Simple Favor should be subpoenaed and deposed. I don't know if they will be, but I feel like they should be. They entered the ordeal at a critical stage. While she was hijacking the editing of It Ends With Us from Justin, she was also filming Another Simple Favor with these morons. Since then, Paul, Brandon, and Michele have all very publicly supported Blake's proven lies, and they will all be working together in a movie called, I believe, The Handmaiden, coming out soon. I discussed this in my last video, but it has all only become so much clearer, with the exception that Brandon Sklenar has smartly stopped vocally supporting Blake since Justin's evidence was released and proved without a shadow of a doubt that Blake was lying and accusing him maliciously so that she could use these accusations as leverage to commandeer his film. The proof has been public for a long time. It is readily available and accessible, and it has even been broken down by myself and countless YouTubers, including YouTube lawyers and podcasters and influencers and literal celebrity journalists who are among the few who still possess even the tiniest shred of integrity in their reporting. So there is simply no excuse for someone like Paul Feig to still be supporting Blake despite the available evidence of her abuse and bullying of people who are less powerful than her and her long history of false accusations against innocent men. We know everything she accused Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath of either turn out to be a complete fabrication, or it is so badly distorted in order to vilify them that it constitutes a malicious lie, or she is accusing them of things without evidence while there is evidence of her doing those very things herself. For instance, she accused Justin Baldoni of discreetly biting and sucking her lip during a kiss, but provided no proof. Yet there is proof from paparazzi footage of her kissing Justin Austin Baldoni and her biting and sucking on his lip. This hypocrisy is not only certifiably insane, but it also proves she is accusing him with actual malice and an ulterior motive to demonize him for personal gain. It also proves she is accusing him with the intention of weaponizing the Me Too movement in mind, because as long as she accuses him, then for people who are gullible or who fancy themselves feminists or people who are equally as vile and amoral as she and her husband, the truth is irrelevant and inconsequential to whatever agenda they have in mind. So the accusations alone will suffice, regardless of the lack of actual evidence. Paul Feig is content with her unproven allegations because he needed his movie that she was the face of to do well, and he even went as far as hiring people to vocally support her lies to ensure he didn't lose public support for his projects. This man is just as vile as Blake and Ryan, and I hope he is held accountable for his role in supporting Blake's lies and crimes. So here's that clip from my old video breaking down the involvement of Paul, Brandon, and Michele in supporting Blake's extortion. It's also just hilarious to me the way Ryan and Blake were so obviously doing all they could to buy these people's loyalty, like telling Isabella that she was cast by Taylor Swift, which was a lie.
So we did a TikTok search. We looked through thousands of women and tapes, and we had lookalikes submit who had never acted before, and then I found Isabella. Our wonderful casting director sent me her tape. And if you look at her at the right angle, it's a spitting image. More than just the resemblance, she is a phenomenal actress. And this was her first film.
She told me Taylor Swift helped her get the role, like signed off on her audition tape.
I had brought in, I was casting, and I had actually brought in and showed her casting tape to Blake and Taylor, and they were both like, yes, her.
And also inviting them to the premiere of Deadpool and staging pap walks with them after a night out to just create an illusion that they're so close and chummy and that Justin is the isolated, problematic one. It's so freaking manipulative. And I do wonder if these actors are now looking back on these moments and realizing they were being completely taken by master manipulators in Blake and Ryan during these moments. These were not moments of genuine friendship or closeness. They were using them to create an image to further help their extortion scheme. And then there's the dastardly Brandon Sklenar, who turned against Justin so fast he probably got whiplash. I have no sympathy for him. And he actively promoted the libelous New York Times article for Blake, and who must now feel like a total imbecile for doing so, because that article and Blake's entire case have been destroyed with facts and evidence and the full timeline of events that shows she was not sexually harassed, but she did hijack this movie through extortion and threats. And there's no wonder why Brandon turned on Justin, even for someone he clearly finds as insufferable as Blake. Look at his face here. He cannot stand the sound of her voice, but he's putting up with it because it's going to help his career. So Brandon Sklenar has no interest in the truth prevailing. He's happy to bolster whatever narrative will keep him employed and paid, even if it means backstabbing a man who gave him a significant role in a hugely successful movie. This is what Brandon Sklenar had to say about Justin before Blake fed him her lies.
He was great. I mean, he did a really good job at balancing being both, a lead actor in the film and then being a director and a producer. And honestly, the entire crew that he assembled was just so incredible. I mean, everybody in this film was just on the top of their game. It was a really pleasant environment to work in. I never felt like I was on a set.
And here's what he said in an interview on set. So again, before Blake's lies. And I had a a phone call with Justin Baldoni, our director, and over the course of that phone call, it became very clear to me what this was and what it meant to the people who have read this book, men and women alike, but largely women all over the world, and how much it helped them. And then also Justin's passion and his intention behind making this film, I think was one of the biggest things for me, because he does have such a strong intention and you can feel it when you speak to him about it. And I think when creating anything, I mean, that's kind of paramount in making something halfway decent, and his intention is very strong, and he hires people who also have a very clear intention. I think collectively the chances of making something that is impactful, hopefully as marginally as impactful as the book has been, would be a massive success. And I think that was a real eye-opener to me, just hearing him firsthand and what it meant to him and what it's meant to so many people. So this is proof positive in 2023 that Justin's entire purpose for doing this movie was its message to help domestic violence survivors and possibly people currently experiencing domestic violence. It was never a part of his plot to smear Blake to only focus on the survivors of DV. It was his plan all along, and he was the only truthful, consistent one that showed integrity throughout this entire process. Not Blake, not Colleen Hoover, who completely flipped her idea about how she wanted this movie represented from the email she wrote to Justin about her not wanting it to come off as a rom-com, and then how she chose to promote the movie with the idiot Blake. Two completely different approaches, and she went from one extreme to the next just to appease a massive celebrity. Justin had integrity, and he stayed true to his message and his mission from day one to the last. And people can see that, and everyone admitted that long before Blake came along and accused him of anything. Brandon Sklenar continued, "It's translated just in terms of the vibe on set. It's a really, really pleasant set to be on, and it comes from the top. Jamie Heath, our producer, he's such a lovely guy, and Justin is so warm, and there's no tension. It's just a very open, safe environment, as you'd hope it would be, given the subject matter of the film and the message we're trying to get across. But it isn't always the case on sets. It could be a really tense environment, and that's something that kills art, and sometimes it fuels it. But I think in this case, it's essential for making what we're doing." I'm grateful to him for that, because it's truly been a really, really pleasant experience being on set. It doesn't get any clearer than that Justin ran a top-notch, very safe set and made everyone feel welcome and comfortable on set. And then he says of Jamie and then the producers, both have been great. I mean, like I said earlier, it's been a really truly positive work environment, just really kind people. And I think it just comes from the top. I mean, we've had some bumps along the way, as you do in films, and scheduling things and unexpected shifts and location changes and schedules, and everyone just, I've yet to see someone throwing a clipboard and yelling or anything. And this right here is what Brandon said to defend Blake when she started getting backlash in August 2024 for her tone-deaf, exploitative, opportunistic marketing of this film. And this is what Brandon posted to his stories after the libelous article came out in the New York Times. So he was doing his job as one of Blake's little flying monkeys so that he could be rewarded later. He put a caption, "For the love of God, read this." Brandon Sklenar, how about for the love of God, you shut the fuck up? He is reportedly repped by WME, who is a massive talent agency in Hollywood, and he signed with them in September 2023 during the production of It Ends With Us, while they were on break. So basically this would have been while Blake was cooking up her scheme over the writer's strike after she was denied the dailies, when she was deciding she really wanted to take this film over whenever filming began again. So this is right during that crucial time that he was brought on as a talent by WME. This is notably the same talent agency that reps Blake and Ryan Reynolds, and who also reps Justin, but who dumped him the second Blake's libelous New York Times article dropped. That means WME had zero interest in due process. They are just as bad as the rest of these people who betrayed Justin to remain in the good graces of Blake and Ryan. They dumped this man before any real proof was provided of a smear campaign and before Justin had his day in court. Not only that, but WME was reportedly pressured by Blake and Ryan to dump Justin as a client, and they did. But they somehow expect people to believe their exclamations that they weren't pressured by Blake and Ryan to dump Justin when they literally dumped him only after Blake's side of the story was publicized.
Baldoni's former talent agency, WME, dropped the Jane the Virgin star on December 21st, the same day it came to light that Lively sued him for sexual harassment and accused him of running a smear campaign against her. The talent agency executive allegedly responsible for firing Justin Baldoni from its roster is speaking out. Emanuel shared that he has known Lively and Reynolds for over a decade and called them really incredible people. They've never had any bad mojo out there or treated people badly, Emanuel said. He added, if all that Lively's lawsuit alleges, including Baldoni sexually harassing her on set and fueling a retaliatory public smear campaign to destroy her reputation, is true, then those involved are really bad people. Speaking of Lively and Reynolds, he said, these are good people who have been in the business for decades, have never had any bad press about them, and all the people they've worked with like them.
What a low IQ, shockingly amoral, garbage take. This is the most bad faith take I've heard yet in this case. Is this really the spokesperson and the brains behind a company of this magnitude? Is this really the level of professionalism with which this agency operates? Speaking haphazardly and making decisions on a case from a place of admitted ignorance, blatant bias, and feelings of personal loyalty or disdain, or just him mentioning what other people think. The sheer number of logical fallacies contained in this single interview are mind-boggling. They're making my fucking eye twitch. Appeal to popularity. Ryan and Blake are innocent because everyone he knows and everyone they've worked with and even the media likes them. And these people, of course, can't possibly be wrong. Appeal to emotion. He's personally a ride or die. Basically, he knows the public can relate to strong feelings of personal loyalty, although in reality, these feelings are utterly irrelevant when determining whether or not sexual harassment or a smear campaign took place. Appeal to authority. He believes Blake and Ryan over Justin because he has worked with them for many years and they are the bigger stars and they have a bigger status in Hollywood. And for him, that's the totality of what would constitute a feasible argument on this matter. Appeal to ignorance. Believing Justin is guilty without evidence simply because he is accused. Hasty generalization, believing Justin is guilty when only Blake's side of the argument was presented, and sans an investigation into her claims, or even simply hearing Justin's side of things. And we know there was no investigation because they fired him literally hours after the New York Times article came out. False dilemma, special pleading, circular reasoning, the list goes on and on. This guy is a fucking imbecile. I'm ride or die. What? Something tells me this doesn't exactly pass the legal threshold of fair business practices because it violates every conceivable protection against fraud, conflicts of interest, deceptive practices, choosing Blake over Justin for the simple fact that he has known her a few years longer and that she and her husband are more influential, and because everyone likes them is certifiable. This man is a lunatic, and these comments and his firing Justin for the reasons he has listed have to be a breach of the contract with Justin, right? It can even be seen as sexist discrimination against men to demonize them without proof just because they're male, and you feel that it's the safer thing for you and your company to do in a post-Me Too society. That is gutless. Firing a man over unproven allegations long before he had the opportunity to defend himself, and standing by that moronic decision by continuing to publicly vilify him with zero proof while also ignoring evidence of the extortion this evil sadistic couple subjected him to, including a video of Miss Shit-for-Brains explaining in painstaking detail how she habitually hijacks films, is madness. I hope Justin bankrupts every single last one of these pieces of shit. And they also were involved in helping to pressure Justin and Wayfair Studios to put out a statement written by Blake and Ryan. So that shows you how much they are aligned with Blake and Ryan and how much they were doing their bidding. So I don't believe for a second that WME was not pressured by Blake and Ryan to dump Justin. And it was also reported that Ryan Reynolds had called Justin a sexual predator to this agency at the premiere of Deadpool, I believe, or at the premiere of It Ends With Us. I can't remember which. So that is just disgusting language that in no way reflects anything that he was accused of. At best, what he was accused of are moments where he could have been a little more mindful or careful, but at the same time, he was entrapped in a lot of those situations. Calling him a sexual predator is completely out of line. And what makes WME's decision to side with Blake and Ryan so much more obvious and egregious is that one of their agents conveyed to Justin and his company, Wayfair Studios, that Ryan and Blake were known for bullying and threatening their way through Hollywood, and that no one ever successfully stands up to their threats. They also admitted that Blake's downfall was essentially self-inflicted, which everyone can see, and they did this when speaking to Justin behind the scenes. But for some reason, they still pushed for Justin and crew to capitulate to this evil, bullying couple and presented them with that laughable statement that Blake and Ryan prepared for Wayfarer and their team to publicly release. So it wasn't enough for Justin and crew to accept responsibility for Blake's own self-inflicted downfall. They were so sadistic, they wanted to pin the acknowledgement and the apology for Justin and made certain to use language that was as self-flagellating, demeaning, and emasculating as possible. This is so psychotic and evil. I cannot believe it. But beyond the WME debacle and their craven submission to a demented, power-tripping couple who had already extorted a man out of his hard-earned production with false sexual harassment allegations, Brandon Sklenar is repped by this reprehensible company as well now. It was uncovered by internet sleuths that Brandon Sklenar is set to star in a movie called The Housemaid with the freaking director of A Simple Favor 2 called Paul Feig or Feig, whatever his last name is. His casting was announced in October 2024, right around the time Blake's libelous New York Times article is suspected to have been drafted at the earliest based on metadata of the website. And this is around the time she was basically rallying support and needed credibility lent to this bullshit story by the cast and by other people involved. Because remember, it was always Blake's plan to present the cast as hating Justin and having found problems with him and the set environment, which is simply not true. It is totally contradicted by the cast's own words in interviews before she got to them with her lies. Brandon Sklenar seems to have been rewarded for publicly taking Blake's side and lending credibility to the lies and distortions in this article. Paul Feig or Fig, the director of A Simple Favor 2, Blake's new straight-to-streaming movie, he has gone on the record twice now defending Blake, even after the facts of Blake's extortion were brought to light, which also makes him an asshole and a bad faith actor, knowingly colluding with a proven extortionist to clear her name in the public eye just because he wants you to watch his movie. Hollywood is demonic and full of human excrement. So let me see if I got this straight. Brandon Sklenar is set to be starring in a movie with this greasy, underhanded director who has his head up Blake's ass and won't stop singing her praises because she's starring in his new movie. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a coincidence at all to me. It's also worth noting that Brandon Sklenar will also be starring alongside a man named Michele Morrone or Michele Morrone, who also publicly came out in support of Blake in one of the more recent pictures of her, despite her proven extortion and lies. Also, we have this little bullshit gem here, him going on the record to support her, and you guessed it, sharing the libelous New York Times article. It's beyond clear a memo went out to Blake's little flying monkeys, which included telling them to link to that now debunked New York Times article full of her lies and distortions, and they were all rewarded for their public displays of solidarity.
So it's usually not my thing to make those kind of videos, but I think it's time to stand up for a person that I really love, and this person is Blake Lively. I personally met Blake during A Simple Favor 2. We shot this incredible film together, and I felt something was wrong, and I felt the pain. Blake was in pain. And I'm really tired to see those kind of cruel and bad comment about her without knowing the situation. So that's why I want to link right here an article, the New York Times, just to make you understand before commenting what happened. That's all I ask, and that's all I want you to do, all right? Blake, I love you so much. Keep it up, and we're gonna see each other very, very soon. Love you.
And now we all know why. He worked with her on A Simple Favor right alongside Paul. And now he's gonna be starring with Justin in this new movie, which is directed by Paul as well. This all feels so underhanded and incestuous and wrong. Everyone who turned on Justin seems to be intimately connected with Blake and her husband on some level. Also, let's just break down exactly what he is vaguely alluding to in this video. He is being dishonest, first of all. That much is obvious. And when being dishonest on a subject you are truly clueless about, it's best to refrain from providing specifics and ensure you say just enough with just the right gravity so that you sound convincing, but also so that you can maintain plausible deniability. It's so clear he's trying to retroactively allude to her having been noticeably upset on the set of A Simple Favor 2 due to the abuse and harassment she faced on the set of It Ends With Us, when in reality, A Simple Favor 2 was filmed from April to May 2024, and there is text message proof that during this time, Blake was completely preoccupied with extorting the living hell out of Justin and his production. So if Michele Morrone sensed anything off about Blake, it was her inhuman ability to ruthlessly rob a man of his life's work, make him cower to her under the threat of publicizing fake Me Too allegations against him if he didn't fall in line, and also the mental gymnastics she was going to have to engage in to defend herself if her horrendous on-set behavior and carefully crafted web of lies was ever exposed to the public. She got in over her head in extorting this production and didn't realize it would go this far, and was probably beginning to panic the lid would blow on this whole thing eventually. That's what Michele Morrone noticed about Blake during that time. And during the time Michele claims Blake was in pain, there are literal text messages and emails of her threatening her way through the entire editing process, then taking over the edit altogether, then firing the editor, firing the composer, then threatening her way through the marketing of the film, removing the director and the lead actor from the poster of the film, removing his A Film by credit, and strong-arming her way into a producer credit and a prestigious PGA mark. So sure, she was clearly in pain. Clearly a traumatized person who was battling pain would have the time to do all of that. The idea that Blake was the one in pain here and not the editor and composer she fired, or the female ADs she had fired, or Justin and Jamie, whose movie she stole, is ludicrous on its face. It's the ridiculous lie of a man whose palm was greased in exchange for a superficial message of support for Blake and sharing her article, and which resulted in him starring in a movie with the same director currently publicly defending Blake at all costs so that his upcoming movie won't be a flop due to his lead actress being utterly disgraced by her behavior, as she deserves. She would then go on to promote It Ends With Us without a care in the world with zero visible pain, and while completely trivializing the heavy central themes of the film, to instead promote her hair care line, her booze line, and angle for a position as the director for the sequel by telling everyone how much work she did behind the scenes. The only person who was in pain during this time was Justin Baldoni and his people, of course, because he was being extorted to death. We have proof of that in countless text messages, and proof of that in photos of him at the freaking hospital, and proof of that in an emotional podcast he filmed before these lawsuits were ever set into motion. He has been the one wronged and harmed here, not the charlatan Blake Lively.